I'm really glad you're joining us this week online with Paris Community Church. My name is Joel, and I get the great pleasure of being the pastor. One of the things that we really value as a church is we want to create community. We want people to be able to gather and to connect with one another. And so one of the ways we do that is we show up regularly every Sunday morning to gather and to not only worship God and to focus upon Him, but also to gather with other people and realize that we are better together. And so if you're ever in the Paris area, we'd love you to come and join us on a Sunday morning to be a part of community. We have coffee before the service, during the service, after the service. And what always amazes me is how early people show up and how late they stay, because community is so important. Now, if you can't join us in person, we understand. And so we're going to continue to be online. But the next step for you would be maybe perhaps looking for ways to hear more about what is happening in the life of the church. And so just head over to the website, click on the link, and you can sign up for our e-blast. That gives you information about all the other things that are happening, because maybe weekends just don't work for you, but there might be another opportunity for you to connect, because ultimately we want to create different spaces for people to encounter God. And so hopefully there's an opportunity for you to connect with us. Well, today we're jumping into our series, Life Transformed, and it's going to be a great time together because we're going to hear again from people in our own church as to the difference that Jesus is making in their life. And just as you watch, as you listen, maybe start to consider for yourself, what is the next step for you? No matter where you are, no matter where you live, no matter where you are at faith, whether you're committed or you're curious, there's always a next step for you. And we would just love to help create that space for you to take that step, to encounter more of Jesus in your life. And so if you ever have any questions or you ever have any things that you would like us to specifically pray for, reach out to us, send me an email, and we will connect with you, whether it's online, whether it's in person, because we just want you to encounter more of God in your life. Thanks for joining us this week. I hope that this time together is helpful and is meaningful for you this day.
I just want to speak the name of Jesus over every heart and every mind, 'cause I know there is peace within your presence. I speak Jesus. I just want to speak the name of Jesus till every dark addiction starts to break, declaring there is hope and there is freedom. I speak Jesus. Your name is power, your name is healing, your name is life. Break every stronghold, shine through the shadows, burn like a fire. I just want to speak the name of Jesus over fear and all anxiety, to every soul held captive by depression. I speak Jesus. Your name is power, your name is healing, your name is life. Break every stronghold, shine through the shadows, burn like fire. Shout Jesus from the mountain, and Jesus in the streets, Jesus in the darkness over every enemy, Jesus for my family. I speak the holy name, Jesus. Shout Jesus from the mountain, over every heart and every mind. 'Cause I know there is peace within his presence. I speak Jesus.
So welcome. It's great you're joining us this week. Last number of weeks, we've been working on a series called Life Transformed. It's been a series where we've looked at different individuals in the Bible and how because Jesus meets them where they're at, their lives are changed. Their lives are transformed. But as we work through this series, we've always asked the question of, let's not just keep it at arm's length, but begin to see, how does this make a difference in our life as well? How can Jesus meet us where we are at? Well, today we're going to switch it up a little bit, whereas we want to share some of the stories of people in our church, in our community, and the difference that Jesus is making for them. And so the place we're actually going to go is to have conversations about some of the youth in our church. And so I'm really excited this week to be joined by John. John heads up our student ministry. John's been with us for about 1 year. And so we're going to hear just a little bit of his story, but also the way in which he is witnessing the impact of Jesus in their life. And so, John, welcome.
Yeah.
Great to have you here, but more importantly, have you working with our youth. And so let's jump right into it. We've been talking about the difference that Jesus makes in our lives. And so start to share your story. Like how has Jesus made a difference in your life?
Yeah, I mean, it's great to be here. I grew up in the classic Christian household from when I was a child and went to Sunday school, did all the classic upbringings of a child that's going to church. But I would say it was never super deep. Once my parents split up when I was around 6 or 7 years old, it turned into like I'm going to church every other week. And I was like, you know what? It's not that big a deal. I'm still going to church twice a month. And the other half of the month, I get to sleep in on Sunday. So I'm like, I'm not complaining about that. But then I grew up in a really small church as well. So because of that, I didn't have like a ton of Christian friends. There'd be the classic few other kids my age at my church, but we'd only see each other on Sundays, and I'd have the one that's occasionally at my school. But being from Mississauga, there was so many big schools that there was actually no one like super close knit. It was just kind of everyone sporadically around. But yeah, so that can kind of continued throughout my whole childhood of just the on and off of going to church every other week. And I'm not gonna like say that that was the main reason, but I just never really fully invested in it. I always say if like you could have asked me a basic theological question about how you're saved or what does Easter mean or what is Christmas, I could have given you the church answer. I had that background, but I never actually cared enough about making it personal to me. I just had the head knowledge, but it wasn't in my heart, wasn't transformed. And then I think once I went into high school, that's kind of where it really started to become noticeable. I wouldn't drop the whole Christian identity. If people asked, I would say, yeah, I'm a Christian for sure. But if you looked at the way I lived, I was like just living like a classic high school kid. I wasn't doing anything crazy. I was like not a crazy rebellious kid, but it was just, I didn't care that much. I was kind of living for myself. I didn't care about high school. Like I genuinely didn't care about school. I was just kind of all about football and whatever else high schoolers care about. And then somehow, some way in grade 12, I was able to lock in enough to get accepted to university. I made a turnaround, but yeah, so that was kind of like my upbringing going up into university.
Right. And so kind of up to grade 12, you're now moving on to university. Obviously there was a shift. I mean, university is a big change in people's lives. And so what happened once you landed in university?
Yeah. So I got accepted to Brock in 2018. So my first 2 years of university, I was doing teachers college or like teachers education. I wasn't 100% sure that's what I wanted to do. I was just like, being a gym teacher sounds fun. But as I like moved away, so going into St. Catharines, I'm like, I'm not living at home. So I finally lived away from my parents, and that's when I probably dropped that whole Christian identity. I'm like, wait a second, no one's making me go to church every other Sunday. I'm like, I'm sleeping in every Sunday while I'm at school. And I wasn't like super social either, so I didn't like create a big friend group. I was just kind of going to my lectures, going to my seminars, not creating a big community. And then I was like, this Christian thing isn't for me. I don't really care that much. Again, I didn't build that foundation. I didn't build the roots. So when I completely lost the little bit of community I had, I'm like, good enough. I'll just move on. I'm living my life. I'm, an 18-year-old trying to be an adult, trying to figure out what's going on. But then I did my first 2 years of university like that. And then halfway through my second year of university, so that was 2019, I believe. So that's when the pandemic hit. And I remember not going to school for a whole week, expecting to get sent home because all the universities were closing down. So I'm like, today's gonna be the day. And I just didn't go to any lectures for the whole week, just waiting for it. But eventually we got sent home. And I was like, well, I don't know what's going on now. I'm just living at home. The world's going crazy. There's a pandemic. We don't know when it's going to end. There's a bunch of protests going on in the world. I'm like, this is kind of absurd. But I'm like, I need to work. So I always used to work with my dad at a steel factory over the summers. And luckily, because he's a supervisor, somehow we were working at his factory overnight. So instead of doing like a classic day shift, it was only him and I in the factory, which was pretty fun because it was a way more chill vibe. It was quiet. But because of that, I got to get closer to him. I was finally living back at home and I was seeing him every day. And he was my big Christian influence at the time. But also just seeing everything that was going on in the world with the pandemic and again, all the riots, I'm like, the world's messed up. And it really like made me sad and it made me like question, like, why is everything in chaos? Why is everything so hateful? I'm like, this can't be what the world was made for. So it kind of just led me to like search. I'm like, humans aren't supposed to be this hateful. We're not supposed to be this out of order. And then I kind of just went back to what knowledge I had. I'm like, well, I grew up learning about God. I grew up learning about the creation and like his perfect world. So I'm like, what does this actually mean? So then it kind of just led me to, searching the Bible, searching up questions. I had a friend from university who was a Christian that I went to high school with. And I was like texting him. I'm like, hey, can we chat? And that kind of led me to just really seeking out God and just trying to understand what was going on with the world. So I think that was kind of this turning point in my university career. And then after that, it was just kind of moving on to like, well, now I don't know if I want to be a teacher because it's COVID, but I want to work with kids because I'm like, I know that's what I want to do. So then I switched into a different program. I switched to child and youth studies, which was pretty much the same thing as teacher. You don't just get the teaching qualification, but essentially I was like, it'll still help set me up to work with kids, but it'll help in more of like a social sense. So I can go into a nonprofit organization or do like charity work or just things with, kids in need. I'm like, I feel really called to do that. And because of that, I was like, hey, I know this is what I want to do. So that's where I'm going to go.
Right. Yeah, like COVID was dropped on people, and it was those moments where I found people were either drawing closer to God or like pushing further away. One of the questions we often see when people share their story is the influence of other people in their lives. And you talked about your dad asking questions, but I know in our conversations in the past, you talked about these five girls, these five women that really had an influence on you.
Right.
What was that about in terms of you're asking questions, you're wondering what's going on, and God uses these people in a real powerful way.
Yeah. So these girls all went to Brock University with me, and I didn't know them. Like I didn't know them for my first 2 years at university, but the roommate that I mentioned that I went to high school with and that I lived with my first 2 years of university, he knew them through like P2C or some church organization at Brock. But then after that summer of like where I was kind of searching, I'm like, oh, I'm finding God again. And, God brought me back in. I was like, I need some sort of community, especially with school being online. I'm like, I don't want to be holed up in this house for the whole year. And I remember there was some sort of outdoor church picnic event that my friend was invited to, and he brought me to it. And that's where those five girls were. And so they all lived together and they were all Christians. And then they kind of just became like really close friends of ours, especially with COVID, where like we'd try to go hang out, do as much as we could. But then they just became like my main source of community, especially without church being online. I'm like, we can't really meet together. We can't meet as a church anywhere. I didn't have a solid church yet because I became a Christian again over the pandemic, where I'm like, okay, well, there's no church I can physically go to. So I'm just watching random churches online. I'm like, I know the importance of community. So these girls just became that sense of community. They become this area of like, we could really build the friendships. And then we kind of just stayed friends throughout the rest of our university time. and it just continued to help push our faith. We continue to like just challenge each other and just, encourage each other in growth. And, once churches finally came back, it's like, oh, where can we go to church? And we're going to church together. We're going to young adults groups together or small groups. So it's just a really good sense of community that, without them, I'm sure God would have found a way to make things work out, of course. But I'm like, it was definitely a great help. And like, they're still like 5 of my closest friends today. So, I try to bring them to church, and we're all across Ontario now, but it's like, we still stay in touch. And it's just that community aspect that has been so beneficial.
Yeah, I think you touch on such an important point that people have an impact in our lives, right?
Hmm.
And so for people that maybe are watching and are asking questions and are searching, one of the best things to do is find people who follow Jesus and just have conversations with them. And for those that are watching that are like, man, like, how can I make a difference? Sometimes it's just being available to people that are asking
Right.
questions and coming alongside. And so out of university, you transitioned to summer camp.
Hmm.
I've worked in camps a little bit as well. I know what how much excitement, but also what a stretch that can be. Just real briefly, how has that had an impact upon your life and upon your faith?
Yeah. Yeah. Summer camp was huge. Again, I mentioned earlier that, going throughout university, like my first couple years of university, I was not social at all. And again, like I didn't have a big friend group. And it wasn't until after COVID or during COVID when I met these girls, I started becoming more social because I'm like, I need that community, first of all. But because of that, one of the girls or a couple of the girls in that group, like went to the summer camp Mediba. They grew up there their whole lives. So it's like, hey, we need a summer job that will be fun. It's like, why not? I've never gone to camp as a child. I'm like, let me go work at one and see what it's
Nice.
like. But then so I went and I worked there for 4 summers. And, each summer was such a great experience of just getting to really invest in young people. The kids most of the time are just there for the fun. But then there's that faith aspect of like, hey, you get to have these late night conversations with kids about faith, even just random things that they hear in like the story times or whatever it is. But then also like the aspect of that camp community is something I've never experienced before. It's like you have 50 people, 60 people, all around the same age, all going through similar walks of life, all trying to pursue their relationship with God. And you're just in this community living together 24/7 for a whole 2 months. And like you really build those friendships. And there's just like, again, some of my greatest friends that I have to this day, especially like people that have influenced my faith, I met at camp. And the person, my old camp supervisor, he's the one that kind of encouraged me to like continue to take steps of like, once I'm done school, what I want to do. I'm like, I want to work with children, but I don't know what that means. And he's like, honestly, you should just try to do a ministry job. I'm like, maybe.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think your story is perfect because it just really captures again how one of the things we talk a lot about is just Jesus meets you where you're at. You
Mhm.
know, whether it's in university, whether it's in COVID, whether it's with friends, whether it's at camp. And so we're gonna fast forward again, and you land up in Paris Community Church here in Paris, Ontario. Real quick, how did you end up with us? Like, how did God kind of bring you into this place?
Yeah, no, it's always a funny story. It's a crazy story because after I graduated in 2024 with my child and youth studies degree, I moved back home with my parents and I was working full time with my dad at this factory because I'm like, I don't really know what I want to do. I knew I didn't want to live in Mississauga, so I'm like, I'm not going to go search for a career job here because I don't want to get stuck here. And then it was just a random winter night. I was like, I really don't know what I want to do. I was like struggling. I'm like, I feel like I'm just kind of stuck. I'm like, I don't really know what my degree does. And then I was just job searching. And I was like thinking back to what my like camp supervisor said. And I was like, well, let me just look at like ministry jobs, like youth leadership jobs or in churches, stuff like that. So I just found the random opening in Paris. I'm like, I don't even know where this place is. I've never heard of this place. So I searched it up. I'm like, okay, it's only an hour from Mississauga. It's not that bad. I'm like, well, why don't I just send in an application? I'm like, because you guys put like, I remember it's like camp experience was like really accepted. I'm like, hey, I've got a lot of that. So
Yeah.
I sent the application, not really expecting much. I'm like, it's just a random church in a random town I've never heard of. And I kind of just left it. I didn't apply for anywhere else. There was just like my one job application after graduating. And then I remember getting like the message back about, oh, we want to follow with more questions. I'm like, oh, cool. So then I do more. And then it's like, oh, I got an interview. So then doing the interview, then like kind of at that point, I'm like, okay, the door keeps opening. I'm like, this door isn't closing. I wasn't thinking much about it. But then it got to the point I'm like, this is realistically happening. I'm like, I feel like this is just working out the way it's supposed to. Like everything just kind of seemed easy. It was just kind of flowing. And it just led me to getting the job a random day. I'm like, sweet. I'm like, I'm like, I can not work full time at this factory and I'm getting to work with kids in the church. So I'm like, honestly, like that's great. So it just felt really like easy. It felt like God just continually opened the doors throughout that whole process. And, you know, I'm a pretty like anxious person when it comes to not knowing what's coming next. But throughout that whole process, I'm like, it feels like it's coming. I'm like, I felt pretty like comfortable knowing that I'm like, well, the door keeps opening. So I was just kind of like enjoying the process going through it.
Yeah, it's so good. And I think you just articulate well the fact that often it's when we look back that we start to see just God's hands over our story and just how God opens doors and closes doors and brings us in. And so we're so grateful that you're with us and you're working with our youth and just all that is taking place. And so just kind of last two more questions for you. Second last question is if you were to summarize what is one of the key lessons that you've learned when it comes to following Jesus?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is just continually letting God influence the way I live my life or the way I make choices. Like, for example, going back to when I first became a Christian in COVID, that's when I'm like, well, I need to switch programs. I don't know if I want to be there. But I wanted to switch to a program where I'm like, you know, switching it to child and youth studies is going to open the door for me to go do more work I felt I was called for, like more social work with children in need. I'm like, well, I could be a teacher, but I can also work for nonprofit organizations this way. I'm like, I felt really called to do that. But then working at summer camp, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of like really enjoying the whole ministry aspect of this. Like I'm getting to teach people about God, teach people about Jesus and lead young people there. And, you know, just based off of that, I'm like, okay, maybe this is also a real possibility. So I was really just trying not to close the doors of what I wanted to do. And then the whole shift was like, it became less about, you know, what's something I can do for myself, but what is God calling me to do and how can I do things to serve him and to serve others around him? So I think like that was probably the biggest change in my life that I noticed after accepting Christ and just trying to follow him each day is just, you know, this isn't about me, but it's about him and how can I serve him through it all?
Yeah. I remember very distinctly in the interview with you, I was in the room and, you know, asking people questions and hearing your response. And you made the comment around always wanting to get them to say the next yes of always. And that's the language that just like, it just speaks to me because I'm always talking about the next step. And I think it's so true. Just like always looking at what is your next yes when it comes to Jesus. And so last question, we're going to kind of wrap it up here. But you've been working with primarily our high school youth, but really excited that we're developing more of a young adults ministry as well, and we're going to jump down to junior high youth as well. But you've been working with our youth at our high school, at our local church as well. Just really kind of quick, how have you seen Jesus having an impact upon the youth in our community?
Yeah, I mean, the big notice, like with the youth in our church, just seeing the investment they're making in their own faith. You know, they're continually trying to figure out what is the next yes they can make. For some of them coming up, it's baptism. For some of them, it's just trying to learn more about God and how that plays into their life. And some of them is just investing in the community. And that's also been a big aspect I've seen is just, you know, when I came in, like they knew each other, but it didn't seem like they were really like close friends. But with what we've been pushing is they've been buying into like this community is important and they've becoming friends. They've been sitting together and they've just been really enjoying that time. And, you know, I think that's been helping with the whole youth ministry with not necessarily like the numbers, but it's really getting them to buy in and like, hey, this is a good thing. Let's bring people into this. So for them, it's just, I constantly see them taking that next step of maybe it is, I just need to invest more into our friendships and maybe it's baptism. But then even with the local high school, it's the impact group that they have there. I started like last spring when I first started, when I didn't really know what was going on. And they probably had about 10 to 12 kids on average. But then even this upcoming year, this next year, I'm like, there's about 20 to 25 students showing up. And this is like
Amazing.
A random like lunch break. They're giving up their lunch break to show up. And it's just seeing them. It's like, they're trying to figure out the next step as well. They're in the space of, hey, like high school's hard as Christians, especially as teens. And they just want this community. So just getting to work with them and just getting to like help them understand like high school's hard. This isn't going to be an easy thing, but you guys have each other. You have this community, and this community is so important. So just again, it's like I constantly see, whether it's in our church or in the high school, that these kids, they're not dumb. They're not like shallow. They know that these next steps are important. And they're constantly searching for the next yes decision. And, sometimes they just need help finding that next yes decision, like all of us do. So that's been a really like impactful thing for me. It's like, hey, what is the next step we can take? It doesn't need to be some big monumental checklist, but, each day we got to be saying yes to God. So it's just helping them see that and see the importance of that.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think for those of you watching, no matter where you are in life or where you are in faith, like what is your next yes? And so thanks, John, for not only spending this time, but for the great work you're doing in our church and our community. And just as we kind of wrap up this morning or this evening or whenever you're watching, we're going to show two videos, Gwendolyn and Hannah, two youth, a part of our church that have made the decision to be baptized. And so on Sunday, we are going to be celebrating baptism with them. But we wanted to share their videos as well to articulate in their own words the difference that Jesus is making in their life. And so as you watch them, as you consider your own life, would you consider this? What is your next step? What is your yes to Jesus? You don't necessarily have to know the entire end of the story. As we heard from John, as we're going to hear from Gwendolyn, as we're going to hear from Hannah, when you say yes, Jesus opens a door and creates an incredible opportunity for you to encounter more of him. And so what is your next step? What is your next yes to Jesus? Thanks for joining us. Watch these videos. They are life-changing.
My name is Gwendolyn. I grew up going to church, but my whole life I never connected what I learned to my own life. And it wasn't until about a year ago I started going to a youth group in Brantford. And one night we had a Youth Connect night where all the youth groups from the area came together and for some worship and a sermon. And after the sermon, the speaker came up and he said that for anyone who hadn't given their lives to Jesus or accepted him as their savior, to put up their hand. And in that moment, I felt like everything kind of clicked. So some influential figures in my decision to be baptized are my parents, who always taught me about faith, my sister, who was patient with me when I had lots of questions, and John, who helped me overcome my doubts. I feel like God has been teaching me that I'm not my own. I was bought at a price. He holds my life in his hands, and he loves me no matter what. And this is why I've decided to become baptized.
My name is Hannah. In my life before I became a Christian, I was very angry all the time. I had issues focusing on really anything but myself. It was just very messy, and it was really hard, being happy. So over the summer, I was at an LIT training program for my camp, Ontario Pioneer Camp, and I was surrounded by a bunch of teenagers who were my age in the same boat as me, and they all really showed me God's love through their actions, their behavior, their words. And I was like, wow, I really, really want to be like that. I really want to be able to show people God's love through my behavior, through my actions, how I live my life. So at that camp, they had these jars that we put little gems and stones into, I want to continue living with Jesus, or I want to commit to Jesus for the first time. And I kind of looked at them, and I looked at the stone in my hand, and I was thinking, I have committed my life to Jesus so many times over the years, but I've never really followed through on it. So I put my stone into the following Jesus for the first time jar, and I have worked on following Jesus ever since that, and I really put effort and time into it. And yeah. Well, I'm definitely have a change in my attitude for sure. I've focused on my friends, my family, other people, not myself. I've been so much happier. I feel lighter. I feel also I've done so many things that I've been so scared to do. I spoke in front of an audience the other day with a microphone. That was terrifying. I did not think I was going to be able to do it. And the way I speak now, I feel I don't think I've been a well-spoken person for most of my life, but I had a situation not that long ago, and it was really hard, and I didn't think I was going to be able to express the way I was feeling, but I did with perfect clarity, and I kind of just blacked out in that moment. And then afterwards, people were like, oh, yeah, you were so well spoken, like your mom would be proud. And I was like, oh, wow, I did not think that I was capable of doing that. And I just feel like so much lighter.
You give life, you unlock, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out a praise, pour out a praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out a praise to our land. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out a praise, pour out a praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out a praise, pour out a praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out a praise, pour out a praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out a praise to all land. To you all land. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to all land. To you